Antiquarian delvings in America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the islands of the sea corroborate the written annals, folklore, and legends of tribes and nations. The past of this pendant ball is one long, awe-inspiring chronicle of cannibalisms, invasions, ravishments, cataclysms, battle, murder, and sudden death. The surface of the soil is a lethal chamber, the bottom of the sea a carnal house. Both are littered from pole to pole with the ruins of forgotten civilizations that men and nature have delighted to destroy. Everywhere and always the debilitated have perished. Everywhere and always the mightiest have won. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, power, slavery, pain, joyance, side by side. Races of helots are never wanting. See to it that you, men, that you breed fighters. See to it that you train them too. The harper is not made otherwise by harping, nor the warrior otherwise than by war. Let muscle force be pitted against muscle force, brain power against brain power, and let winners wear the laurel and losers wear the rasping sackcloth. Let there be no compromise, no half-hearted philandering, no backing down, but as Darwin commands, let the strongest live and the vilest die. Black, furious, and tragic are the bloody annals of man's evolution, and there is no rational evidence upon which to conclude that it shall ever be otherwise, or that it would be wise for us to attempt the making of it otherwise. Why then be discontented with that which we cannot alter, even if we dared? Better, after all, 50 years of Europe than a cycle of Cathay. Let it be as it has ever been, as the grim old Norseland skald chanted it when our race began to emerge into the dim, distant twilight of the gods. An age of axes, an age of swords, an age of tempests, an age of wolves. Be it among animalculae, moth or mollusk, birds of the air, beasts of the field, fishes of the sea, planets, suns, stars, or solar systems, force reigns unchangeable, unchallengeable, inexorable. When the kindly Roman emperor imagined that peace had settled down permanently upon the ancient world, even then, the dissimulating assassin's dagger was sharpening for his throat, and now, while lower organisms dream of a world of lovers, of arbitration instead of hostility, of conciliation between rival carnivores, the mechanism of deletion is silently under construction that, when completed, will sweep them off the face of the earth. The strongest organisms are always the determinants. They hold in their hands absolutely the destinies of weaker organisms. Further, in all the interwoven differentiations of matter and mind, equality, mercy, pity are wholly at a discount, except alone in family relationship. A man's family is his property. It is part of himself. Therefore, his natural business is to defend it as he would his own life. Women and children belong to man, who must hunt for them as well as for himself. He is their lord and master in theory and in fact. Under natural conditions, there is no haven for the wretched, no hope for the weaklings, no resting place for the weary, no quarter for the beaten. Nature loathes infirm ones. Every organism, every human being, must conquer or serve. This is an ultimatum. Life is a race for power into the very jaws of death, and hell take the hindmost. Hell take the hindmost? No! That isn't so. Christ takes the hindmost. Exactly. That is correct. In real life, he is the true prince of evil. Soothingly he saith, Come unto me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and those who obey are sure of hell. Nay, ascendeth up for ever and ever. In ancient ages, the incapables were permitted to perish without comment, but with us it is different. Almsgiving, first by the monastery, now by the state, has preserved them in their leprous seed until modern nations are actually swarming with men and women, rich and poor, who are totally useless and totally vile. Selective influences that operate under natural conditions have been kept in abeyance by religions and moralisms until the whole human race is saturated with inherited mental disease and rottenness of the bones. Our Christian civilization is a forcing chamber for weakly animalculae. Natural conditions are a lethal chamber for them. The proper home for incurables is the grave. Competition must be to the death. If retarded in any way, it fails of beneficial results. The chief intent of false religions and false moralisms is to arrest competition halfway to safeguard degenerates in possessing that which they could neither seize nor defend if competition was unlimited. Humanitarian institutionalisms have been invented to handicap and eliminate the elite of mankind, vainly forever. With the normal man, it is a pleasure to struggle, a pastime to fight, and nothing is sweeter to him than to confiscate his confiscator and surpass his surpasser. To, as it were, smite his enemy hip and thigh, and spoil him of that which be spoiled from others. The normal man prefers to eat others than to be eaten. With the abnormal man, it is otherwise. He is of the mob. He sheepishly obeys public opinion. He is one of a flock. That word flock, does it not postulate the existence of shepherds to round up and drove, of specialists to castrate, of shearers to shear, of cattle dealers to purchase, of butchers to kill, of tanneries, wire fences, corrals, abattoirs, and finally of roast lamb and mint sauce, with fat carnivores sitting round, lapping blood and purring gently? 11. Herbert Spencer, referring to the origin of manners, customs, and political institutions, says, "The will of the victorious chief, of the strongest, was the rule of all conduct. When he passed judgment on private quarrels, his decisions were the origin of law. The mingled respect and terror inspired by his person, and his peerless qualities, then deemed supernatural by the rude minds that had scarcely an idea of the powers and limits of human nature, were the origins of religions, and his opinions were the first dogmas. The signs of obedience by which the vanquished, whom he spared, repaid his mercy, were the first example of those marks of respect that are now called good manners and forms of courtesy." How human history duplicates itself over and over again! How it revolves in a never-ending panorama! Wherever human herds congregate, the victorious chief still governs, though not without envy and impotent opposition. Everywhere he is master in one guise or another, but it behooves him to beware that his power is not undermined by the torrido of sanctified utopianism, founded on the multitudinous votes of the vile, the vulgar, and the vitiated. Blighting indeed is the tyranny of collective humanity. The great political superstition of the present, also writes Spencer, is the divine right of parliaments and the implied divine right of majorities. The supremacy of living manhood over devout dreaming, over literature, dogma, law, and tradition must be boldly asserted and aggressively maintained, as it was in the days of yore. Woe unto you, strong ones, if you ever get beneath the hoofs of the trampling, bellowing, maddened mob. Ha! You must meet the guile and death snare with battle and with rack. Woe to the vanquished, was stern Brenno's words, when stood proud Rome beneath the Gallic sword. Woe to the vanquished, was stern Brenno's words, when stood proud Rome beneath the Gallic sword. Woe to the vanquished, when his massive blade bore down the scales against her ransom weighed, and on the field of foughten battle still, woe knows no limits, save the victor's will. The survival of the fittest is the scientist's translation of the heroic ages via victus. Grim and harsh it may appear to nervous souls, but it is true to nature. Neither legislative enactments nor pious incantations can deflect or nullify it. It may be thwarted and turned aside for a time, but only for a time. Just as a river may be banked back by the building of a breastwork, the waters cease to flow onward until the dam is brimful, and then over the top the flood leaps with resounding crash and uproar, finally sweeping away the obstruction itself. Decalogues and be it enacteds are mud ramparts the decadent ages vainly erect against the irresistible flow of natural events. Sooner or later these feeble barriers go down or are surmounted. Just as the river surmounts the dam, Cardinal Newman tersely describes the Church of England as a serviceable breakwater, and he speaks with astuteness. All sacerdotalisms are serviceable breakwaters. They may last for 1 century or 20, but they down tumble in the end. Artificial obstructions cannot last, for if they did, then the cankerous ancient civilizations would never have been overwhelmed, for they also had their serviceable breakwaters. That is to say, gods and temples, mob politics, mob morals, mob philosophies. Legal and ethical barricades may not be depended upon to protect dwindlings from the judgments they bring upon themselves and which they richly deserve. Every people that have been blotted out were rightfully blotted out. What a frightful maggot heap this earth would now be if the civilized populations of the past had not perished. If nature had permitted them to live and multiply and propagate their progress, that is to say their iniquity, what a noisome stink it would be. What must near futurity be like if wars and plagues do not come, burning contemporary infernalisms and purifying the air? Thus the utter extermination of enfeebled breeds is in accordance with the highest wisdom, and whether we personally approve thereof or not, it must persist. There is nothing unjust, nothing ultranatural, nothing diabolic about the elimination of the vile, to make room for the sound in mind and limb. Clearly, therefore, in every department of life, the lesser force must be overthrown by the greater, which, being interpreted, meaneth, might is right. Absolutely, unreservedly. From the records of history, the facts of life, and the discoveries of science, this startling deduction may be thoroughly proved. The law of life, as Benjamin Kidd writes, has been always the same from the beginning, ceaseless and inevitable struggle, ceaseless and inevitable selection and rejection. That might his master should require demonstrating is in itself a proof of the mental and moral perversity that pervades the world. Perhaps, however, the age we live in may not be an age of enlightenment and progress, but an age of darkness, arrested development, and psychic paralysis. Mayhap the theologies and intellectualisms of our time may be but a magical hoodwink. We might, for example, be enchanted on the downgrade track that leads to eternal extinction while insanely imagining progress and enlightenment. Also, the imagining process may be part of the complicated mechanism that facilitates the descent into Sheol. Official statistics show that racial deterioration, begun centuries ago as a sequence of ultra-naturalism, is now proceeding at a tremendous rate. Dr. Haycraft, F.R.S.E., in his book Darwinism and Race Progress, asserts there are strong grounds for believing that during the last 30 years the race has decidedly degenerated. The decadence of character is obvious to the most obtuse understanding, especially in this land of liberty and light, where you can buy statesmen with a snuff box, editors with $1, and women with a gewgaw. Undoubtedly degenerative forces prevail in our social life, and yet it is impressed upon us from our youth up that a great light hath come down upon the earth, and all the ends of the world hath seen the salvation of our God. Salvation indeed! What lunacy! So the multitude goes like the flower and the weed, that wither away to let others succeed. So the multitude comes, even that we behold, to repeat every tale that has often been told. To act as the hunted ostrich on an African karoo, to hide our heads from the cosmic vengeance in hot pursuit, is as futile and ridiculous as it is base. No empiric reorganization of the social system, no rock of ages, no legislative meliorism, no fungus virtues, no scheme of fool redemption, no patent economic plan, no Israelitish codes of thou shalts and thou shalt nots, can deliver whimpering defectives from the wrath that is their just reward. Sooner or later their day of judgment cometh, bringeth in its train of desolation, reparation, and rolling doom. Even as I write, with wrecked civilizations lying around me cold and chill, outraged nature is preparing her whirlblasts of wholesale avengement. Europe is a vast powder magazine with a strident maniac in the middle, waving a burning torch. And from Asia is wafted the odorous stench of plague-smitten millions. Any day, any hour, civilization may be startled from its hypnotic trance to gaze upon the mightiest drama that has ever been unrolled, when the tempest flings out its red banner of lightning, and great nations groan and reel and surge and rock beneath the thunderous tread of trampling legions, drilling for the savage shock. Military arsenals are preparing in every city, and floating defiantly on 7 seas are the steel-clad fortresses of rival mights. Foolish and blind or mad are they who think the struggle for existence ended. It is only begun. This planet is in its infancy, not in its decrepitude. The end of all things is afar off. The kingdom of heaven is not at hand. Incessant is the rivalry for supremacy among men, and manifold are its metamorphoses. Not for a single hour, for a single second, is there an armistice. Night and day the combat rages, and with renewed virulence on Sundays. When we fall asleep and when we wake up, the clashing of the weapons and the crunching of the bones is sounding on our ears. Everywhere the sword is uplifted on man. Everywhere Cain's bludgeon is cracking skulls, and with bloodhounds Americans hunt each other. The hands of congregations of the faithful are red with the blood of the innocent. Yet how they boast of being washed clean in the blood of their brother, the Lamb. Eternal battle is the main condition upon which man holds his life tenure. When the brand is shattered in his hand, that is death or slavery. When his enemies are beneath his heels, that is life, honor, success. Indeed, the struggle between men is more pitiless and more unmerciful than among brutes. The brute beasts do not enslave, but permit the unfit to die off. Man enslaves his brother man on business principles, and makes fuel of the widow and the fatherless. The failures in life may be counted by millions, and everyone knows their horrible fate, their blazing death. Behold them being whirled into the blazing maw of the great iron furnaces. Overt action is not always needful for the drastic removal of lower organisms. Very often, if left alone, degenerates cremate themselves. If given control of governmental mechanisms, they immediately commence to grind one another into mincemeat. That is to say, into dividends, crying, "Holy, holy, holy!" Mentally, physically, morally, they are past redemption. Doomed souls are they, miserable sinners. 75% of the inmates of state orphan asylums, for example, are the children of parents that perish from chronic alcoholism. Poverty, helotism are the results of chronic ballot boxing. Alcoholism and politics are convenient destructives, crematories whereby weak-minded flocks may eliminate themselves with beneficent results. Nature having already condemned them, they provide each other with palatable poisons for slow but sure suicide. They build Gehenna fires and cast themselves headlong into blazes. Sociology is a biological problem, and nations are herds of cattle. How much demagogic hee-hawing would die down into solemn self-questioning if this grim, omnific fact was clearly realized? Be as a lion in the path. Hate for hate, and ruth for ruth. Eye for eye, and tooth for tooth. Scorn for scorn, and smile for smile. Love for love, and guile for guile. War for war, and woe for woe. Blood for blood, and blow for blow. Thou hast listened full oft to the diabolic philosophy of a divine creepling. Love your enemies and bless them that hate you and despitefully use you. But I say unto you, love thy kindred, love thy friends, love thyself, and hate thine enemies with a whole heart. Be a foe to your friend's foe, a friend to your friend's friend. And above all things permit no wrong, done unto thee or thine, to pass unchallenged, unredressed, unavenged. Let thy motto be, tread not on me. For he that tamely submits to insult and injury is worse than a dog. He is a dastard, a born slave, a Christling. I am the friend of all brave men, the foe of all cowards. I call up high daring, I cast down despair. An evil spirit hath inoculated our race with the hideous gospel of submissiveness. An evil spirit hath inoculated our race with the hideous gospel of submissiveness, of degeneracy. Resist not evil, it whines, and if a man smite you on one cheek, smash him on the other. Resist every evil. Be as a lion in the path. Be dangerous even in defeat. Courage, I say, courage, and ever more courage. Even the stars in their courses are fight for the bold.